would like to thank you for joining us for the Victory Podcast. Today's podcast is from December 15th, 2013. Today we continue our study through the book of Mark with Pastor Trevor in Mark chapter 3, verses 7 through 21. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome.
Mark chapter number 3 is where we find ourselves today. This is an interesting passage because I think it shows three different types of people that we find actually in the church today. And these are interesting because I think they're a little easier to bring home and to just kind of find out where we're at from a spiritual perspective. Maybe look in the mirror a little bit and kind of see where we're at. And Mark chapter 3, verse number 7, Jesus is by the Sea of Galilee, and he's drawing the crowds, needless to say. And so it says this: Jesus withdrew with his disciples to the sea, which is the Sea of Galilee, and a great crowd followed him. Now, this is a pretty amazing crowd here. It says the crowd from Galilee and Judea and Jerusalem and Idumea and from beyond the Jordan and from around Tyre and Sidon. Now, can we have the map? I don't have my pointer. I don't know where it went. I know. I hope the Lord can still use this. All right, so where did that come from? Give me that. Bring that up here. And I gotta watch this guy. It's the beard. Anybody with a beard, don't trust him. Just don't trust him. And so yeah, exactly. Case in point. So anyway, I got a laser in this thing. All right. Thank you, Ken. Thank you. Here's the place that everybody came from. It says, where am I at here? It says Galilee and Judea, which Galilee, they're right here. See where Capernaum is? That's where Jesus is at this point in time, right on the Sea of Galilee, which is right here. It's right there. They got people from Galilee, which is this region right here, coming to them. They got people from, Judea and Jerusalem, which Jerusalem's down here. And this is the area right down here is Judea, and Idumea down here, and up here on the other side of the Jordan, and up here in Sidon and Tyre. Now, in order to come from Beersheba to Capernaum, is just about like us going from here to Ellensburg, Washington. That's about as close as I could figure in miles. It's about 147.2 miles according to MapQuest. Which I'm sure is how they did it back then. So anyway, but that's how they got there, and that's a long ways to see Jesus. You almost think in your head of localized crowds. You know what I mean? Back then. But his fame, when it says his fame was going abroad, it was going abroad. This entire region here, from Beersheba up to Sidon, is 163 miles. So they have this huge area that's 163 miles from there to there, and all over here, all gathering to see Jesus up here in Capernaum. Why? Because they found out that he heals the sick. He found out he does miracles. They had found out all these things, and so all the sick people, all the gawkers, everybody who wanted to just see a show, all those people gather from the entire region, 163 miles radius of all these, this entire seaboard, all goes and takes off toward the little Sea of Galilee, little area of Capernaum, to try to chase down Jesus and just see what's going on. Okay? That's a big crowd. I don't know how many thousands, but when he fed the 5,000, they said it was 5,000 plus women and children. Some people estimate it was upwards to 15,000 to 20,000 people. Those are the size crowds that are following Jesus at this point in time. Okay? They're the ones that just want to see what's going on. And the ones who want personal satisfaction. Right? They want their lives made better. And Jesus does do that for some people, but he doesn't do it for everybody. Right? Just because you believe in Jesus doesn't mean all the bad stuff in your life is going to go away. But it does mean it's going to be put into proper perspective, which makes you able to deal with it in a way that is glorifying to God and is comforting to yourself. Right? If you have cancer and you get saved, doesn't mean necessarily the cancer is going away. It might, God can heal. God does that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. But you have these people that saw their opportunity, and you can't blame them. They were going to do everything they could to make that opportunity happen. But anyway, let's read and we'll get to that. It says, Jesus withdrew with his disciples to the sea, and a great crowd followed him from Galilee and Judea and Jerusalem and Idumea and from beyond the Jordan, from around Tyre and Sidon. When the great crowd heard all that he was doing, they came to him. This great crowd. I don't know how big, but it was great. That means really big crowd, all right? So thousands and thousands of people come to him from all over the area, and he told his disciples to have a boat ready for him because of the crowd, lest they crush him. So the crowd was so adamant to get to Jesus that they had to have a boat so they could get offshore a little bit so that the people wouldn't crush him. That's a big crowd. That's almost like our crowd today, a little bigger maybe, but not nearly as fanatical as you guys. I mean, but you're fantastic, and there's no way it was better looking. But they had a huge crowd. They were crushing them. Has anybody ever been to a big concert or something where they had festival seating? I don't even know if they're allowed to do that in a lot of places anymore. But I remember back. I don't remember it, but I remember hearing about it. Like back in the 70s, I believe it was The Who or somebody had a big concert in Cincinnati. And they had a big concert in Cincinnati. It was festival seating, and they let everybody in, and everybody tried to rush to the front. And I forget how many, 7, 8 people got trampled to death. Hundreds of people got hurt because everybody was rushing to try to get to one spot. And so it can happen. When everybody's trying to get somewhere. We went to a place called, it was called Passion. It was I forget which one we went to, 07 or something like that. Anyway, we went down and they did it that way. You just lined up outside where the Atlanta Hawks play. I don't know what the name of it is, but we all lined up out there. And when those doors opened, I mean, it was just like, you better not slip and fall. I mean, it was moving. And that was a Christian concert. Everybody knows Christians act better than everybody else. By the way, when we were going in one time, I was working out back then. And not that I'm not now. I'll leave that up in the air. I'll leave that up to your discretion. But I was walking in. This is a great story, isn't it, babe? It is a great story. I got to tell it. So I was walking in, and it was just, my wife was right here. And this other girl was right here. And I was walking, and this girl over here bumped into me, and she grabbed my arm, and she goes, "Ooh, nice guns." Honestly, other than, marriage and having kids, I mean, that was one of the greatest moments of my life. It's never happened again. I don't know what was wrong with her that she made her think that, but I was sitting there, and she grabbed my arm, and she said, "Ooh, nice guns." And I was like, "Could you say that again, please?" And she said it again so my wife could hear, and I went home feeling like Jesus had done a great work in the life. But anyway, I digress. Everybody was rushing, big crowds, big guns, all that stuff. But anyway, yeah, we already had a gun show on Main Street. You didn't know it. Why is everybody laughing? So anyway, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get back on track. So they get the boat. He told them to have a boat ready for him because of the crowd, lest they crush him. For he had healed many, so that all who had diseases pressed around him to touch him. Now, honestly, the first thought in my head when I hear that is, ugh, gross. I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, all these people that are sick and have disease. I mean, you can act like you'd be the big spiritual one and be like, "Oh, that would be great if all the diseased people came around." No, that's horrible. It would be bad. It would be bad for me because I'm a little bit of a germaphobe anyway. You know what I mean? Like I always have. As soon as you guys are gone, I wash up. Not because I think you're germy, but you probably are. But I call it washing the fellowship away. It's just a tradition. But I'm getting a little grossed out right now. But and you guys aren't even diseased. But I don't think. But I can't imagine everybody with the diseases they had back then and sores and sickness and everybody's just doing everything so desperately. It's hot. They're sweaty. They're getting in there in a big crowd, crushing around. I mean, you can imagine what the scene is like. It's chaos. But I don't blame them. If that was me, and I knew I had a shot here at getting healed, and when you were sick back then, you were a social outcast. And they were doing everything they could to get healed. They were crushing around him, and they got into a boat. And it says that whenever the unclean spirits, verse 11, saw him, they fell down before him and cried out, "You are the Son of God." And he strictly ordered them not to make him known. There's a few reasons why people think this is. One of them is that they feel like that Jesus didn't want him to do this because he was holy and they were as unclean as you get. And he didn't want the name of the Son of God to be proclaimed by that type of entity. Another reason they believe is because Jesus' time wasn't due yet. It wasn't time for him to die. And the more it became known that he was the Son of God, the more the Pharisees and the leaders there attempted to kill him. So there's a few different reasons why this may have happened. And the truth is, it's not made perfectly clear. And in those moments, I think we can assume there are certain reasons why this happens, but we're not for sure. But I think those are two legitimate reasons. And so that may very well have been why that happened. Another reason could have been it could have whipped up the crowd even more, and that's not what Jesus was after. Jesus wasn't after a crowd. As a matter of fact, I think that might have something to do with it because of the next passage. You kind of take context and gauge. He calls his disciples next. In this context, he calls his disciples, and they're the ones who are going to go preach the truth of Jesus, those who were following him. And perhaps he didn't want the demons to go proclaiming him in some abstract way when his disciples were going to go out and do it very specifically. And so there are several different reasons that this may have happened, and your study Bibles, believe me, I looked at most of them, and they all say kind of different variants of those three things. But he told them to be quiet either way. He didn't want them to make him known. And then he went up on the mountain and called to him whom he desired, and they came to him. So here's the calling of his disciples. First of all, you had the crowd, right? You had the giant crowd that they're there for many different reasons. Then Jesus gets the specifics together and calls the ones who are going to follow him. He's the rabbi, they're the disciples. They're going to quit everything they're doing to simply follow Jesus everywhere he goes. That's what they were going to do. They were going to follow and check out who this crowd is. It says, and he went up on the mountain and called to him those whom he desired, and they came to him, and he appointed 12. This was a special group out of the crowd. This is a different group of people altogether. These are the ones who aren't just there for a show. These are the ones who are willing to give up everything to follow him, whatever that means, whatever that looks like. Whatever tragedy, whatever heartache may befall them, they are going hard after Jesus Christ. And Paul later, who was also a follower, a disciple of Christ, not called here within these 12, but in Acts very much called to follow Christ. He goes out and he said, as far as earthly things are concerned, there's no one more miserable or beat up or distressed than us. We're beat up all the day long, yet not discouraged. We're cast down, yet not perplexed. And he goes through this whole list of things where it was just not a great lifestyle. It wasn't a very earthly, satisfying lifestyle to be a follower of Christ, but it didn't matter because they weren't about what they could gain on earth. They were about following Jesus and understood that they were going to be beyond blessed forever and ever with him in eternity. You see? So that's who these guys are. It says these are the disciples. He appointed 12, whom he also named apostles, so that they might be with him and he might send them out to preach. These are going to be the ones that were going to proclaim the name of Christ. Not random demons cast out of a crowd, but specific people who said yes to Christ, not only in a belief setting, but also in a life-giving setting. We're going to give him everything. And that's who Jesus appointed to preach or proclaim the good news of Jesus Christ to as many as would hear it. So, he might send them out to preach and have authority to cast out demons. So they're also casting out demons. So they have authority over the demons. So this is a greater calling. This is a greater situation. These disciples preaching out the name of Christ rather than the demons doing it. So he appointed the 12. Simon, to whom he gave the name Peter. James, the son of Zebedee, and John, the brother of James, to whom he gave the name Boanerges. Your guess is as good as mine. That is the sons of thunder. How cool is that, though? These two are like the sons of thunder, you know? I get the impression he didn't mess with James and John. Right? They were fishermen. They were tough guys. And interestingly enough, James was the first one to be martyred, and John never was martyred. So it's interesting. The one that died first and the one who lasted longer than any of them were these two guys. So they're the sons of thunder, and they were pretty rough. I mean, they were fishermen. These were not highly educated seminary types. These were not suit and tie. They had one. His name was Judas. You do the math. But I'm just kidding. If you're educated, I'm sure there's some benefits to that. But anyway, but these guys weren't necessarily your high. Matter of fact, it said when they perceived that they were ignorant and yet they were talking with such authority, those kind of statements were made about the disciples an awful lot. These were just unlearned men. They were normal people. And a lot of us are just normal people. Some of you are exceptional and make 104% in your class, but most of us are normal people. Anyway, and so you got the sons of thunder. Then you have Andrew and Philip and Bartholomew and Matthew, who was the tax collector. We talked about that. And Thomas and James, the son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus and Simon the Canaanian, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. And Judas, that's just who that guy is. That's how he's known. But those are the 12. Those are the guys that were called out. And 11 of them obviously followed him and through everything, all the way through death. All the way through their death, they followed him. All except Judas. That's another type of person that's in the church. See, the crowd that just comes around and wants to see a show. And we can put it on a little bit. You want to see the show, or you want God to give you something specifically to help you out here on earth, or you want God to make your situation a little better. You got those people that come to church. Then you've got the people who are like, I'm going to follow Jesus no matter what. I'm going to follow Jesus. It doesn't matter. The earthly stuff doesn't matter. My life doesn't matter. His life matters. And I'm going to live it for Him because He's already gave me my life. My life is secure in Him forever and ever. If I die today serving Him, that's great because I'm going to be with Him. You can't dampen the spirit of a disciple. You can't beat them up enough. You can't torture them. You can't do something to make them stop being a disciple because that's just what they are. And so, here's the other crowd. This is the most surprising to me. Family. No offense to that. It's not about you. Or joy. But I think the family, it's to me, this group is the ones that just kind of always been there. It's just you go to church. It's what you do. But check out Jesus' family. Then He went home. And the crowds gathered again so they could not even eat. So He goes to His house, the sanctuary of His home. It just floods with people. People wanting healed. Demons getting cast out. All kinds of things happening. And look what His family does. And when His family heard it, they went out to seize Him, get Him out of there, for they were saying, He's out of His mind. He's crazy. He's crazy. He's out of His mind. That's His family. And here's the thing. I think here's another crowd of people in church that's just kind of always been there and always done it. Maybe you were raised in church and just church is your thing. It's what you do. And it's done a certain way. And as long as it's done a certain way, you're cool with that. Everything's good. But when things start to get mixed up, when things start to happen, when crazy things start to go on, when things start to happen that you can't quite explain, when people are getting saved, crazy things are happening, new people are coming in, maybe people you're not super comfortable with, things are going on, then all of a sudden, it's like, whoa, this isn't the way we had it all in our heads that things are going to happen. And let's just back up, let's get out of here. you guys are out of your mind. Or let's go to a different church, you guys are out of your mind. And legitimately so sometimes. I get that. But I'm not talking about, if something's doctrinally doctrinally wrong or heretical. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about we've got to be careful, because when people become radical followers of Jesus, and things start to happen, and movements start, and change happens, and ministries start, and people start to come in, and people that need church the most are people who are disease-ridden spiritually, and they're clamoring to get better, and they need something to help them get right, and they come in, and they're maybe not refined, they don't understand how church works, they don't maybe get it, and they start to flood in because something's going on. We've got to be careful that we're not like, whoa, Jesus, get out of here. We were super comfortable before with the way you're doing things. Let's not get too crazy. That guy had really bad BO, and I really don't want to deal with that. That's just a little too much. I'm not in Africa for a reason. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's too hot, sweaty, no ice cubes. I can't handle it. There may be ice cubes in Africa. That's not a verifiable fact. I don't know for sure. But I only say that because my ice cube maker went out this week, and I was like, Lord, I might as well go to Africa or be a missionary if I only have ice cubes. I mean, honestly, this is torture. But we got it fixed. The thing that motivated us fixing it was seeing how much new fridges cost. And so we got on the ball and got it fixed. It was amazing what a little ingenuity would do. You know how long refrigerators are supposed to last? This makes me mad. 7 years. That's what they're built to last for. 7 years. Somebody complained to somebody about that. Thank you. And then somebody was telling me today they had a freezer in their house that was 45 years old and it still worked fine. Something's wrong with this world. Anyway, thank you, plastic. So you have these three crowds here. Okay? You got the crowd that comes in just curious. They want to see what's up. They want, we have it happen all the time when people come in and they want us to fix them. They want us to make their bad relationships good. I can't do that. I'm not able to make your bad relationship good. I can't make it better. I can tell you what the Bible says about these things and give you principles to live by. But if the other person can care less, I can't do anything about that. It takes two for that. It takes two people wanting it to happen. I can't make that better. I can't heal you. I can't make you better. God can. I can't. That's up to Him, not me. I'm not going to come in and say, if you give us $10,000, this might not be a bad idea. If you give us $10,000, everything's going to be better. I can't do that. It's a lie. It's wrong. I know some people do it, but it's wrong. I can't promise you that. I don't know that. I can't make you better. I can't wave a magic wand. I can't say a magic prayer. I can't do any of that stuff to make you better. I can't do it. And then usually what happens when they figure out we can't, they just go somewhere else and try to find it somewhere else in some other way. There are those people. Then there are the people that have always been here. And it's a little easier for us to say because we haven't been here very long. But you have people that have just been in church and they've got church, they do church their way. And when they come in and things aren't quite done the way they think they should be done or something happens, they get upset and they want you to go back to the way it was. Or do it a certain way. And we've got to be careful in every direction that way because there's no one way to quote unquote do church or have a church service. There's no one way to have four walls and do this. There's just not. So we've got to be real careful that when change happens, that we're as long as there's no heresy, we're okay with that. We've got to have a culture of change, and we've got to be able to move and change. And my goal is to have the next person be able to come in here when I'm relatively young. Relatively young. By the time I'm 55 or so, I'd like to be to at least have the other person in here that can take it in a different direction, because I'm only going to connect to so many people for so long. Then there's other people coming up and they're going to do things and we're going to be like, what are they doing? What are they doing? But we're going to have to trust that God knows what he's doing, and they're following God, and as long as there's no heretical things going on or something absolutely wrong, then sometimes we just have to let things happen, even though we're not super comfortable with it. Because here's the crazy thing, God uses things that we're not comfortable with to do great things. That's frustrating, but it's what he does. I think we all wish that God would do things in a way that made us perfectly comfortable with everything that he did. But we all have a different idea of what that is. So we have to have unity in mind and heart, going after Christ, not going after what we think it should be. Even his own family was like, we got to get him out of here, he's crazy. Something's going wrong with him. And if we're not careful, we're going to be doing the same thing, saying, what God's doing there's crazy. Let's get him out of here. So then you have the disciples. You have the ones that say, you know what, no matter what, I'm going to follow Jesus. No matter what, I'm going after him. No matter what, it doesn't matter what he does to me or if he doesn't do anything for me. That's not what this is about. It's about me following Jesus Christ as a disciple and giving him my life and proclaiming the truth of him everywhere I go with my words and with my actions. And that's the kind of people we want to be. But here's the awesome thing, that none of these groups, the other two groups besides the disciples, that's the map, but the other two groups besides the disciples, the crowd and the family, can become disciples. Right? God uses different things to get people in different places. And here's the thing. Here's a couple of ways to become a disciple, or to be able to become a disciple, is number one, stay teachable. Stay teachable. Don't think that you've got it down pat and you've got God cornered and you've got him in a box, you've got him labeled with 5 neat points and that's it. You've got it down pat and you spend the rest of your life defending those 5 things. Right? When we label ourselves, what we generally do is we spend the rest of our lives defending that label, not proclaiming Christ. Right? We've got to stay teachable. Because we want to grow. I don't want to be where I'm going to be forever right now. I want to grow. I want to know more of him. I want to mature more in Christ. So stay teachable. And don't get set in your ways. Don't get set in your ways and say, well, God did it this way. He's got to do it this way. If you're not careful, you can go with, God used the King James Version all those years. So that's got to be what he's using now. God used large cathedrals all these years. So we need a large cathedral. God used hymn books all those years. So we need hymn books. Listen, those people, when you hear stories of great revivals, what happens a lot of times is people emulate what people did in those great revivals to try to gain those great revivals. What they miss is the fact that regardless of what they were doing, they were trusting ultimately and depending on Almighty God for the revival to happen. It didn't matter what mode they were or method they were using. It mattered who they were trusting in. That was the key to seeing great things done, not the fact how they were dressed, how they were acting, the methods of evangelism, and those things weren't the important thing. It was the dependency upon Almighty God, regardless of the methodology, that is what we need. There's that famous quote by Augustine. I put it on my Facebook, maybe you saw it this week. The famous quote by Augustine says, "Love God and do whatever you please." That sounds scary to me. But that's not the end of the quote. Because it is true. You love God and do whatever you please. Usually that's on the t-shirt. Love God, do whatever you please. ... Well, let's get to the end of the quote. Because if you love God, you would never do anything that would displease the center of your affection. I forget how exactly the quote goes. But that's true. If you love God, you can do whatever you please. Because if you truly love God, it doesn't matter the methodology, it doesn't matter. You're not going to want to displease God with anything that you do because you love him. Right? And you want to follow him and you want to do that. So let's all, regardless of what brought you to church, regardless of why you're here, regardless of what's going on, let's strive to be disciples of Christ. Amen? Something going on. Everybody's like, up here. Eyes up here. Class. So, anyway, we need to be disciples. We need to follow hard after Christ. We need to just say, you know what? I want to follow him regardless of what happens. Not because of what happens. Because we're going to be really disappointed if that's the case. Because circumstances are difficult. Circumstances are hard. Circumstances are out of left field sometimes. But we still love God and pursue Him because we want to be disciples. We want to be proclaimers of the truth of Jesus, not just gawkers at what Jesus might do. And certainly not ones that say, God, get out of here because you're messing up our church service. Right? Right. So let's do what we can to check ourselves, make sure we're staying teachable, make sure we're not thinking that we know everything, making sure we're not set in our ways. And I don't think we have that here, I really don't. But we got to be careful of it, because what happens is, whatever our church is, we like it the best because that's why we're here, right? I mean, most of the time, right? Unless it's some kind of a weird plot to be really mean later, I don't know. But most of the time, we come here because we like this church, right? That's why I come here. It was one of the reasons I come here. But joy makes me. But we come here for that. But if we're not careful, what we'll do is be like, well, that's not how Victory did it. Or when a new guy comes in, there's not a new guy coming in, but in case it is, and you say, well, Trevor would have done it this way, or Sam would have done it this way, or we would, and if we're not careful, we start acting that same way. So we got to be careful about that and realize that God does amazing things in amazing ways, and we're not always comfortable with them. But we're not about what Jesus, the show that may be put on. We're about following the person of Jesus Christ. Amen. We need it.
We'd like to thank you for joining us for the Victory Podcast today. This podcast is a ministry of Victory Baptist Church in Hermiston, Oregon. You can find us at 193 East Main Street in Hermiston, Oregon, 97838, or on the web at yourvictory.org.